Happy Monday, mommies, and welcome to Mommy and Me Active and Free. Today we are joined by Jeida Storey. Hello, Jeida.
Hey, Aria. I'm so glad to be here, girl.
I am glad you are here too. So, for those of you who do not know, Jeida is the mother of Josiah, and she is the wife to Tariq. She is also an author. Woo.
Get my writing on, girl. Write these books.
So, Jeida, let's jump right into it. Just go ahead and start us off with telling us about your journey to motherhood and what that was like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband and I got married in 2015. And so we just hit 5 years in March. So thank you, girl. It's been an amazing journey. And I knew before we got married that I wanted to have kids right away. He was like, I don't know about that. Let's just kind of wait. Let's figure this thing out. And so I was disgruntled, girl. I'm telling you, God really had to work on my heart about waiting. That to me, I tell people all the time, that was my first lesson in submission, because I was ready to start this parenthood journey right away. And thank God for my husband's wisdom, because we weren't ready yet. We still had things to work out. We still had finances that we had to get settled. And so by the time we were both on the same page, it was really, for us, we thought it was perfect timing. So we started trying to conceive. If you know anyone who's ever tried to conceive for any amount of time, it is so stressful, and it's so like not what people think. Like I think a lot of people say, oh, well, you just do, what you do, you make a baby. Not always that easy. It's because it's a lot. It's about timing. It's a whole lot of different things that you can be doing. Supplements that we started taking together, just to make sure that we had good egg health, good sperm health. Like all that stuff is important. So we started trying in December. No, it was January of 20. Girl, what year are we in? It was a while ago. It's about 3 years ago. So okay. 2017. 2017. And so we started trying in January, and I thought that we were going to get pregnant right away. That didn't happen. So we went month after month, and trying to make this baby. And so we finally got pregnant in May, which isn't a long time. But when you're like really hoping for something, it felt like a long wait. And then I had been waiting since we got married. So I was just like, let's get the show on the road. So we were super excited. Both of us were just like, oh my gosh, we started buying things right away. And then when I was about 10 weeks pregnant, I just started feeling strange. Like I just felt like something might be amiss. So we went to get checked out with our midwife. And that's when we found out that I had a blighted ovum. Essentially, that meant that there was a fetal pole and there was an egg sac, but there was no embryo. So the egg never matured and grew into a baby. So essentially, we were losing the pregnancy. So we were devastated. We didn't know what that meant. I mean, when you see all these beautiful ultrasound photos, you see this beautiful baby inside, and ours was just a blank screen, and we didn't understand what we were seeing. So it was a different kind of heartbreak. And it was rough for us. We decided to miscarry naturally. I didn't take any medication. I didn't go and get a DNC, which is a surgery where they go and remove the pregnancy. So that took 2 weeks of waiting for my body to go through the process. And it was during that 2 weeks that I think my husband and I really connected on a different way, together, individually with God. It was really difficult, because we were still praying for a miracle. We were still praying that it was just too early, that it was just, that things just, maybe I had my dates off, maybe, hoping against hope that something would change. Unfortunately, we did lose the baby, and it was difficult. But God held us together somehow. Like when I remember just being like, I had started to sink into a depression where my husband said he didn't even recognize me. He was like, I don't even know like who you are. Like, he was like, your smile isn't the same. Like, you don't have any joy. And he was just like, he was like literally on his knees praying for me out loud. for me to come out of it, because I wanted a child so bad. And I was just like, didn't think that something like that would happen to me. And it did. And I was like, okay, God, in the midst of it, we still trust you, but this is a hard place. But, we made it through that. I wanted to try right away, but I'm kind of glad that we waited. I needed some time to heal, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, and just kind of get things back in order in here. I think sometimes we rush into like trying to get into seasons, and we really need to kind of wait and listen.
Yes.
And what do you want me to get from this loss? So that was kind of like really big for me. So a lot of things had transpired in between there. We ended up transitioning we were living in Florida at the time and transitioning to Texas. And right around the time we were transitioning to Texas, we found out we were pregnant again, and this time with Josiah. So it was scary. It was scary to be pregnant again, not knowing what would happen, especially when 1 in 4 women will experience a miscarriage. Like that number is crazy because I'm one of 4 sisters. So like statistically, one of us, which it ended up being me, would experience losing a child. So I was just like, that's crazy that the statistic is that high. But we don't talk about miscarriage. We don't talk about that a lot. And I think that we should, because a lot of women have shame and feel guilt, even though it's not their fault. There's nothing that you can do to prevent it. And we just don't know. A lot of people some people tend to say, oh, it's okay, you'll try again, or you can have another one. And yeah, that can be true. But at the same time, like, that was an actual life, even though it didn't fully mature, even though for some people the heartbeat may have stopped. Like whatever happened, that was still a real life. And if you want to celebrate and remember and mourn, you should be free to do so. Exactly. So I was going through all of that with Josiah, and it was very difficult because it was weird. I'm like, this is a whole new baby. And it was really a faith walk. And literally from the time the 2 lines on the pregnancy test turned pink to the time he was born, it was a faith walk all the way through. It was a journey. I don't know how deep. I know you have some other questions you want to ask specifically about Josiah's pregnancy, but it was a journey that included complications. I had a situation called or condition called a shortened cervix, or shortened cervix, meaning that my cervix was starting to shorten and dilate, which just happens in labor. So mine started happening in my 2nd trimester. So I found out at 20 weeks with Josiah that I was already dilating. And we could even see on the ultrasound that my cervix was opening up, which is horrible at 20 weeks because you need to keep your baby in as long as possible. So I was at risk for preterm labor. And so I ended up going immediately on bed rest. Incompetent service is really what the term is called. Immediately went on bed rest. They were like, you're done to the end of your pregnancy, off your feet. I immediately had an emergency surgery the next day, where it's called a cerclage, where they actually put a stitch on my cervix to hold it closed. That was an ordeal. Then I found out a few weeks later that I had gestational diabetes. So I had to change the way I was eating. I had to then, thankfully, by the grace of God, it was diet controlled. But some people have to actually receive insulin shots, and it's just a whole ordeal. So it was diet controlled. I was eating low carb, no sugar, low sugar, and I was able to keep it under control. But it was just a lot because about 9 weeks of that bed rest was in the hospital. Wow. So, yep. They kept saying he's going to come early and speaking all this doom and gloom. And I said, no, this is the son that God promised me. I know that he's going to make it. I knew as soon as I saw the pregnancy test that it was a boy, because God had told me after we lost the first baby, don't worry about what's going to happen next. I'm going to give you a son. So I knew when we got pregnant again that I was having a boy. Way before they told us. When they told us, I was like, God told me. So I know, I knew. So I got the stitch removed at 37 weeks, and they were like, "Oh, you're already like 4 centimeters, and he's just gonna fall out." 3 weeks later, Josiah ended up coming exactly on his due date, and it was an amazing experience, amazing birth, and he's the one who made me a mommy. I just love that guy.
Yeah.
Now he's 18 months old now.
With his little feet running around.
I mean, such an explorer, and he teaches me so much about life. Like, I learned a lot from that 1-year-old.
It's amazing what they can do to us and what they allow us to see in ourselves
Mm-hmm.
just by, being their mothers.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I want to get back into, when you were on bed rest, for you, and you said it was called competent, or what was the term?
Incompetent cervix.
Incompetent cervix.
Mm-hmm.
So, because, I know nothing about bed rest. When you say bed rest, does that mean like you were staying in the bed? The only time you got up was to go to a shower and take to the bathroom? Like, is that what you're saying? Like, you couldn't walk around? What was it actually?
Girl, it was all of the above. Because, and there are different levels to bed rest. Sometimes your doctor or your OB or your midwife might put you on like a moderate bed rest where they just say, well, don't lift anything, things like that. I was on strict bed rest where I was, like you said, it was just going to the bathroom, just going to take a shower. But other than that, like my husband, who was working full time, he would, before we transitioned, because I spent 6 weeks at home doing bed rest. And so like immediately when we found out I was going to be basically incapacitated, he bought me like a mini fridge. So like everything was right beside the bed that I needed. He would stock it for me. He was like meal prepping, and the microwave sat on top of the fridge. So I didn't have to go anywhere. 2 steps away and I was right there. So I didn't do anything. Once I got into the hospital, they didn't even like me walking to the window. I was like, can I at least get some sun? Like, yeah, it's funny. So on top of that, it was also pelvic rest, which meant no sex, no family business. We couldn't do anything because it was very sensitive. Like my cervix was literally being held close together. So they were like, don't do any funny business. Let's just keep this baby in. So, and that goes for every subsequent pregnancy. I will likely be on light duty and definitely pelvic rest. So anytime we have a baby, no fun.
I mean, fun is what helped me get my child, Micah, out. So,
And see, well, let me clarify. After the cerclage is out, it's fine because then it's safe for baby to come.
oh, yeah.
But girl, at 37 weeks, when you haven't done anything since you conceived the baby, you don't know what to do. And then, because you're a mom, like when you're like third trimester trying to have fun with your husband, it's hard to breathe. It's like it's like you feel like a turtle on your back.
Mm-hmm.
It is funny. I'll say that. It is absolutely hilarious. But like, if you're not already doing life with your best friend anyway and can laugh at those moments, I mean, I feel sorry for you. It's funny. So yeah, I should say it's really until you're 37 weeks and clear from your doctor. But it's a long 37 weeks is a long time. we played a lot of board games. Watched a lot of TV.
It was like kind of like being quarantined right now.
Yeah, a lot like that. There's a lot like that. It was good times, but you know what though? Like the intimacy was on a different level during that time because we spent a lot of time before God petitioning for our son's life because they kept saying Josiah wasn't going to make it. And we were like, no, we don't receive that. So like we were so like focused on that and focused on getting him here that like that was like it was on our minds because duh. But it was like that's not the most important thing right now. And we connected in other ways. And it was awesome.
I think the thing that I love and that I can connect with you is, knowing what God told you and knowing what you want and believing that and not letting others influence you to think otherwise.
Oh yeah.
I wanted a boy and I was like, I'm having a boy People are like, well, it's gonna be a girl. Nope, his name's Micah. It's a boy. And I was like, I don't want to be in labor for a long time. I don't want a C-section, and that's what I prayed for. And I pushed for 8 minutes, and thank God, because
that's awesome.
Thank you.
Gotta talk about your birth story one day. I want to hear the whole thing, all of it.
I will.
Okay, good.
It's about you. So I was gonna ask you about your support system, but you already talked about Tariq and how, he was ahead of the game. He prepped everything for you. How was that? Because if I'm not mistaken, you didn't really tell a lot of people about Josiah, did you?
We did not announce until he was born. He was about 3 days old when we finally let the world know. We let some family members know, of course, like our immediate family, of course, knew. A couple of extended family members, but not a whole lot of people, and like our closest friends, because we really wanted, we wanted to announce Josiah. We planned when we got to our third trimester, closer to the end. But once we found out that there was a chance that something could go wrong, even though we were believing, once that happened, I said, you know what? I feel like this pregnancy is kind of like a holy moment. And I was like, I don't want to step out there prematurely and talk about Josiah before the testimony is complete. So I was like, let's just wait on God to do what we already know he's going to do, so that we can tell the full story and say, this is where this started. You guys didn't know we were going through this, because I was interacting on social media. Nobody would have known I was pregnant. We were still, supporting other friends that we knew were pregnant, doing all the things that we were normally doing, and just living and loving the people in our communities. And we let a couple of people in, but for the most part, we were just like, we know that that's a done deal. We're just waiting on God to just bring it to fruition. And then as soon as he does, we celebrate. And so that's what we did. But I had a great support system. Aside from my husband, I had dear friends who I could talk to. And I had great midwives who were also Christian, Black women. They were phenomenal. When I was in labor, I had an amazing doula. She was awesome. My mom was there when I had Josiah, which was phenomenal. So, I mean, my support system was awesome, especially my husband. I have to shout him out because he was working crazy hours, going back and forth to our house, which was an hour away from the hospital, back to the hospital to me, back to his job that was 45 minutes away in the other direction, and still holding everything together. And then every night when he would trudge into the hospital room exhausted, he's just like, I know you hate being here, but I'm so glad that you're here because I feel like I don't have to worry about you. I know that other people are caring for you. And I was like, if that's what you needed for me to be in the hospital so you can kind of breathe and know that I'm okay. Because he was like, yeah, when you're at home by yourself, I'm like, what if she falls? And what if something happens and she can't call me? So, he was phenomenal. And also a lot of people are talking a lot more. I'm glad that it's getting more attention, but the Black mortality rate for Black women, mothers and babies, it is through the roof. Black women are 243% more likely to die because of birth complications, and that's just unreal. And being in that hospital, I saw how easily it could happen because nurses and doctors weren't listening to me. Nurses and doctors weren't honoring my wishes and trying to force their opinion and their thoughts. Like you said, some of the negativity onto me. I even had a doctor tell me, why would you wait so long to come to the hospital? You're putting yourself in, what kind of mother are you? Why would you put your son's life at risk? When I was perfectly fine the whole time. She actually lied to me. Funny story. She actually lied to me and told me that my water bag was bulging out of my, basically that he was coming out. She said that he was coming out, and that's how I ended up in the hospital. And she was like, why would you wait that long? You putting your son at risk. And then I later found out when someone else examined me that was not the truth. So I asked, I was like, is it possible for the water bag to come down and then go back up? They were like, no, because one, gravity. So they were like, no, if your water bag was coming out, it would have been inevitable. You would have had him. So they were saying, no, that person lied to you. And I said, and then they came and lambasted me in my hospital room when my husband was not there. So when he was there, my husband was my advocate. There were many times when he would say, hey, you guys are disturbing my wife's peace. And we are all, this is a positivity room. We used to blast worship music. They could hear us down the hall. We used to have signs on the wall that said, shh, watch what you say because my baby's listening. And people thought we were crazy. Cause I'm like, no, I was like, wait, before you come in here and say something to me, is it positive? Because that's what I need in my spirit. That's what I need to be surrounded by, because I'm already in this environment. Who wants to be in a hospital for 9 weeks? I'm already in this environment where I'm perfectly healthy. My baby's perfectly healthy, but my cervix is like trying it. So I was like, don't do that. So he actually told a nurse, he said, I just want to let you know, going forward, if you're saying something that I feel is not going to be conducive to our peaceful atmosphere, then I will literally put my hand up and I'm going to stop you and say, please don't say what you're going to say. Please reconsider your words. She was so offended. She was so offended. She was like huffing and puffing, and she just eventually left the room. And I told him, I said, thank you, because I do that on my own, but it's always great to have your partner, your spouse, come along and say, no, this is not what we're going to do. We're standing on God's word. And this is not what he said. He told us he's giving us a son. So we know we're not going to lose him. So anything else contrary just has to go. That kind of support you can't pay for.
And it's important to have nurses and doctors that have great bedside manner.
Oh yeah.
I had 2 nurses. Well, I had about 5 nurses. But I had 2 nurses who were amazing. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it was 8 minutes was because that one nurse listened to me.
Yes. Yes.
Had she not listened to me, they were trying to give me a C-section.
Really? Yeah.
So mothers, know you have your support system. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Ask them.
It's not that we don't trust the doctors, it's that we want to be informed. And you have the right to be informed.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so I thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people, they go in, like you said, and they don't ask, and they just do whatever without asking.
Oh no, ask questions, verify. If you don't understand something, ask them. So what does this mean? What happens with this procedure? What are the side effects? I even had to, because I was at risk for preterm labor, I had to receive a steroid shot to make sure that my son's lungs, it was for Josiah, not for me, to make sure that his lungs were developed enough, should he come early. So I had to get a steroid shot. I received the shot, but they didn't tell me that it would decrease fetal movement. So I freaked out because he wasn't as active. And I was like, what is happening? And so when I talked to my OB, he came to visit my room, and I was like, I don't feel my baby moving as much. Can we get a monitor in here so we can like strap me up so we can figure out? He was like, oh yeah, that's a side effect. No, unacceptable. No, unacceptable. And so that's when I was like, questions need to be asked. You need to know what is actually going to happen to me, to the baby. What are the risks for me or the baby? Ask these questions. Like they shouldn't be offended. They, and I always say, like, it's not that I doubt your expertise, but I need to know for my own peace what is going to happen, because this is my child in my life.
Right.
And we deserve to be heard. Period.
Exactly. So, y'all getting us riled up. Right. Let me try and get back to the questions. So, as an author, character development is really important. So kind of tell me about, you were talking about, how Josiah was helping you learn things about yourself. Kind of tell us how, or go a little bit more into how he helped you develop your character.
While I was pregnant?
While you were pregnant and as a mother.
Josiah has taught me how, first of all, I was literally just talking to my best friend about this last night, about how I have a deeper connection with God since becoming a mother. Because now I understand what it means to be a parent. I understand now what unconditional love is on a different level. Like, I think that we understand it to an extent when, like, we love our own parents, we love our own siblings, we love our own spouses. But it's a different kind of thing when someone comes from your body and they're yours and they're imperfect. They can't do for themselves. They can't, you know what I'm saying? Like, they fully rely on you. And there is nothing I would not give to him. There is nothing out that to show my love for him. There's nothing he could ever do. I don't care. There's nothing Josiah could ever do. If I have to go to jail for my son, I will. Like, there is nothing that he could do that truly would make me say, I don't love that. I don't love him anymore. That's not my son. Are you kidding me? What? And I was like, how much more? That's what has humbled me about God's love. How much more is his love?
Right.
It's far greater than that. So like that has been like a lesson I feel like I've learned so much more. And also patience. I think on my own character, I'm learning more patience and how to be more gentle. My husband is the gentle one in the family. Like, I always call him like he's like a gentle giant, because like you look at him and you're like, he's mean looking. But I'm telling you, he like has the biggest smile and the biggest heart, and he's so gentle with me, with Josiah. So being a parent has taught me how to be that way with my son, and how to be more intentional about the way that I say things, about the way, like, even facial expressions. Like I said, like I can be kind of rough sometimes. I can be kind of rough. So Josiah's kind of softened those edges and made me aware of the ways that my mouth can damage, tones can damage, so he's helped me so much in that regard. Patience, like I said. I can take more. And I was so impatient before. Like, I was not. My sister was a teacher. She has a degree in early childhood education. That was her calling. Children automatically gravitate to her. She walks in the room and all the kids want her. She just has this thing on her life. And I was never like that person with kids. Like, I'm like, I think they're cute, I'll hold them, but I was never like, like super like. But now it's like this natural patience just like came over me. And my mom was like, you never really exhibited that character trait before. But she was like, watching you with your son is amazing, because he does things and you're just like, it's okay. He does something, it's just like, okay, it's fine. Now, granted, my tone is not the same now that he's a toddler. Now he can reach things on the counter and he can, tell me no. So it's funny, but still, the just that level of patience, I think, has really changed me in that way. And I'm even realizing that that's leaking over into other relationships, being more patient with myself, being more gracious with myself, being more patient with my husband, my friends. It's different because like you fall into these roles and they impact other relationships in your life. So I think that's how it's helped me some.
Awesome.
A lot, but that's just some.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the water birth that you had, because you did have a water birth and it was in the hospital, correct? So tell us a little bit about the water birth.
Oh my goodness. It is my hope that every woman who desires that could have a water birth. We had planned a home birth for Josiah. It turns out that after my cerclage was removed at 37 weeks, that there was like a piece of the suture still inside of my cervix. So, and they said that can happen from time to time, and usually it comes out when you're pushing. So, but I think that kind of stalled my labor for a bit. So I was having like constant on and off contractions for about 3 days. It took about like 3 days of laboring to get Josiah. They don't consider it labor because it wasn't like active, but I was contracting through 3 days.
Yeah.
So, we had planned a home birth. And so unfortunately I had to be transferred to the hospital Not because of my health or Josiah's health, but we actually, by the time my midwives and my whole birth team were at the house with us, and they kept trying to reach the suture and they couldn't really get it. So they were like, well, we have a consulting doctor. Let's see if he can get it out. By the time we got to his office, which is an hour and some change away from our house, my husband was like, it's Tuesday afternoon, it's rush hour. By the time we get back to the north side of town, you could have this baby in the car. So he was like, let's just stay at the hospital, it ended up being a blessing because the hospital where this doctor works out of is very midwife friendly, very natural mom friendly, because I did it completely naturally. And it was great. It was absolutely wonderful. So we were checked into the hospital on a Tuesday. Josiah came Wednesday morning, and the water was just, it was amazing. I tell people all the time, I use a program called Hypno Baby. So I use self-hypnosis during my birthing time. Phenomenal. That was the only way I could have made it through, because 3 days is a long time. And that program went in line with everything we were going through about positivity and keeping your bubble of peace and staying away from the people who were contrary to what your goal was. And that was to bring my son here safely and naturally. So by the time we got to the water birth, it was phenomenal. I tell people all the time, I was like, self-hypnosis, which is not that kooky, follow the clock, and it's not like that at all. It's really just deep relaxation, going within yourself in deep relaxation. So I didn't feel a single contraction it took me an hour to get Josiah out. Part of the reason why is probably because I was so relaxed. I was so chill. I was just like, whenever. I think, and I was so chill that even at one point, I remember my midwife saying, okay, Jeida, it's time to get him out now. Because I was just like, but I feel so good. Like, I was in the pool and it was just nice. I even took like a nap. It was phenomenal. So it was just great because you feel, naturally in water, you feel weightless. Right. So it was just great to just be able to move around. You're, like I said, I was 40 weeks pregnant. It's hard to move. So like being able to like flip on my back or go back to all fours, it was just phenomenal to be able to move however I felt my body told me to move. Right. So I think Josiah came out in 3 pushes. So like before I must have been just playing around. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I remember like they were telling me just do like mini pushes. So I was doing like mini pushes, and I was like, is he close? Because I never felt like pressure, and they're just like, well, yeah, we can feel his head. You want to feel his head? So I would reach down, I felt his head. I was like, okay, cool. Let's get him out. Let's get him out here then. So like I pushed, I think, like I said, it's like 3 good pushes to get him out. Mm-hmm. People talk about the ring of fire. And maybe it was the hypnosis. I barely felt it. Like it was just like it might have felt like a pinprick. It was like nothing. Mm-hmm. So got his head out, pushed him on out, and I didn't even know he was out. They told me, they were like, you have a son. I said, he's here? Like, they were like, yeah. I was like my mom was like, you didn't feel relief? Like, I was like, no, because I didn't feel any girl, hypnosis is real. I was like, no, I didn't feel it. I didn't know he was out. They were like, reach down and get your baby. I was like, shut up. I put him on my chest, and I just couldn't believe that he was actually truly there. Mm-hmm. And I kept thinking in my mind, God, you did it. You did it.
He will give us everything that we pray for. And, if we just continue to believe in him and believe what he told us, yep, everything is set. Well, Jeida, I just want to say thank you so much for giving us such insight, not only into your life and in your pregnancy, but, into the water birth, what it is or what it was like for you in the hospital. So we just want to say thank you so much. I definitely want to bring you back later on so that we can get some insight in those toddler years.
Oh yeah, girl, it's a fun time. And I'm not being facetious. It's fun. It can be. It's all about perspective.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
And so everyone, if y'all want to stay following Jeida, her website is down below, www.jeidakstory.com.
That's right.
You can also follow her on social media. And we just want to say thank you for coming, Jeida.
Thank you for having me, Ariane. It was
Yes.
awesome.
And we will see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye. Hello, mommies. I hope you enjoyed today's interview. Make sure you share and subscribe and click that bell at the top. We'll see you next Monday. Say bye, Micah.